Om Namah Shivaya. I think it was Surjit that asked about the prashna, the word prashna. Wasn't it you? Nilima, you said that? Okay, sorry. Yeah, somehow I did. So we got the answer, Mihir. Did you talk to him? So, in a way, my approximation was correct, that this is a technical term and it is not a question. What it is a name for a chapter. So in the Vedas, the names of chapter all vary a lot. They're different kind of. There's probably some technicality as to if the chapter is small, then you name it one way. If the chapter is big, something like this. For example, in the in our Sri Rudram, it says Anuvaka. So Anuvaka is really a kind of like a section. The Prashna is also a name for a section. And so I believe that in the Krishna Yajurveda, in the Taittiriya Shakha, it is called Rudra Prashna. So that means the chapter dealing with Rudram is called Rudra Prashna. That's what he found out. He was telling me that also. So I have a vague recollection that's how it was, and I wasn't sure exactly. So anyway. Okay, so any other questions that people have?
Okay, yeah. When we start chanting Rudram, we say Rudra Prashna Mahamantrasya Aghora Rishihi. Who is Aghora Rishi? Because even this book says Agastya Rishi is, Atreya is the one who's actually the Rishi for the first shloka in Rudram. I've never heard of Aghora Rishi.
I would not be able to give you a technical answer on that. I don't know. So this is, it's very possible, couple of things. Normally, there is a rishi associated with a Veda. So the Vedas were through the mouth of a rishi. Okay, and we can talk a little bit about that. It'll be interesting. So, but let me finish this part. So normally, when you have something unique and specific, then a rishi is associated with it. But in this particular case, if Rudram is available in lot of shakhas, I cannot believe that will be a single rishi responsible for all of that, because that goes against the definition of the rishi, where you have a specificity for that rishi. So for that reason, I am not sure, and we can certainly ask Swami Vidyatmanandaji about that also. But just to elaborate on a separate point associated with the rishi, nothing to do with this. I was having a conversation with a gentleman. Is Venkatraman? I think Venkatraman was going to come, but he's probably left already. He lives close by. So he was asking me this morning that he has a friend who is a very bright person and a well-known, is it a doctor or I don't remember this. Anyways, he's a very well-known, very bright, very intelligent person, but he doesn't want to look into Vedanta. Because Venkatraman says that, you please come here, this is something, there's a lot of authenticity and come. He says, no, I don't want to come. So one time he asked him, why are you hesitating? He says that Vedas are all man-made. And I don't see anything which is man-made. And I don't want to really, because human beings can make mistakes, And so this is his reasoning, and for that reason he has stopped. So I said, did you ever tell him that it is not man-made? This is the only thing which is apaurushaya. Everything else is paurusheya. This is apaurushaya. He himself maybe did not know this as well as he should have done that. But in any case, he never really made that point. Then he turned to me. And this is a conversation that I had just this morning. He just turned to me and he said, but then it is all ascribed to rishis. I said, yes, it is ascribed to rishis. Then how can you say that it is not? Rishis were human beings. And so how can you say that that it is apaurushaya? So again, I think these things need to be really explained and learned. So and this is where even more than Swami Dayananda, Swami Viditatmananda had explained this. This is like about 25 years ago. I remember when I first talked to him and met him. This is the beauty about learning, is that you get bits and pieces from the same sampradaya and you kind of put it together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And you're not happy until you see the picture emerging in the jigsaw puzzle. So if somebody says this, then you don't disbelieve that person, but it doesn't fit into the whole thing. So this whole question of paurusheya and apaurushaya, man-made or not man-made, is a good question which has to be clarified. Swami Viditatmananda was the one who really clarified it for us very, very nicely. What he said was, and I remember his example so well and so on, he says, just look at the akasha, the ether at this point, any point, especially this is all kind of like a small village compared to where we really are. But if you go to the Bay Area, it is a huge number of cities like New York and Philadelphia and so on. He says, if you go there and you look at the ether, do you know how many radios, audio channels, and video channels are right here in the ether? If you count AM and FM and all of these, plus the radio, then the television stations, and you could not even count them. It must be in hundreds. But do you see any of that? You don't see any of that. Absolutely not. You see it if there is an equipment that is equipped to receive the signals which are already there. So you need a tuner and a very well-made tuner, and then the tuning, and then you can pick up amazing things. Right now, if you brought the television channels, and you can go through hundreds of television channels and imagine the immense variety of sound and pictures and so on and so forth. This is the manifestation of the signals that are in there. So what that means is this. This is the thing we need to understand. Vedas are always there in the creation. Here at least, the transmitters can turn it off, and it's very possible that the same ether that you are aware of, that I'm talking about, can have zero signals. It's very possible. It probably is very improbable, but it is very possible. The Vedas are always there. And actually, the Vedas that we are aware of is a fraction of what is there, because a lot of them have been lost. Okay, we just have a fraction of, but there is enough for us to really have a complete picture of life and so on. So Swamiji says that the Vedic signals are always there. perhaps in Pralaya, Mahapralaya, which is about 100 million years, they might be suspended for a while, but there also they are not destroyed, they are suspended. And when the new creation comes up, the same signals are always there. So then what happens? So basically the Vani, the words of the Vedas are apaurushaya because they are never created. As I said earlier, this is not a created thing, it's a part of the creation. It's an aspect of the creation. You can't even say it's a part of creation. So it is already there. But who brings it out as a tuner depends upon the efficacy and the tuning of the tuner. And the rishis are those that have come through many lives of inquiry and vichara. And slowly, they were aware of, they captured the signal as human beings. So did they create the signal? They did not create the signal. They simply made it visible. So yes, the rishis can be seen to be paurushaya. And so if somebody says, no, this is man-made, they are only partially right. If they are not right at all, but you can say, okay, I can understand that there is a tuner that had to be designed. And so here this is a human tuner, because our minds really has to capture it with our memory and our ability to dissect information, all of that. So the rishis were amazing people who had, they're not an accidents of nature. They have worked through several lives. And so similarly here also, in fact, all the scientists are rishis in a manner. Because Einstein, for example, is a rishi. That kind of a mind, you're not going to get that anywhere. But doesn't understand the Atma. Maybe in his next life or the following life, the fineness of his mind can be directed towards, because he also died looking for answers. He did not have the final answer. Even though he is so bright that probably none of us can compare to him. But the rishis were the ones who finally became spiritual scientists in that sense. And they were able to talk and to interpret and so on. So the Vedas are basically apaurushaya, but the presentation of that is paurushaya. This has to be understood. And it took me a long time. We didn't ask the right. I'm sure that Swami Dayananji knew this very well, but that never came up for discussion. So we never really did that. Swami, we made that clear about 25 years ago. I remember that. He has given 4 or 5 of these very major hints, and I'm very, I should really just give him pranama just for doing that. But yeah, this is how it is. So, question in the back. Where's my glasses?
So before I ask my question, just a comment on what he asked. Aghora Rishi, and then it's followed by Anushtup Chanda.
Okay.
So the Aghora Rishi is for that Nyasa and not attributed to the Rudram, because Rudram is Achandasta. So there is no Chanda there. So it's not, Aghora Rishi is not for the Rudra Patha.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
So you, Guruji, you touched upon a couple of things during today's lecture, where you mentioned Jainism and Buddhism. Mm-hmm. They are like Nastika in the sense that they don't take Veda as a pramana.
Yes.
So can you talk a little more about that, and where their concept of Ishvara or no Ishvara comes from, etc. So, thank you.
So let's start with Jainism. And I'm not an expert in any one of them, so it's not as though I can give you if you ask me some more questions on this, I probably could not defend it. But I have some general idea about that. So, see, here's the thing. This identity between Jivatma and Paramatma is something which looks so difficult for us to grasp. It is not difficult if we pursue the inquiry a little bit, and if we have the right teacher that can explain. It's not that difficult. But if those conditions are missing, then the inquiry between Jivatma and Paramatma looks impossible. Impossible. And yet there is something there. This is where the ego of the human beings comes in. So the human beings are very bright, but there is also a certain element of I did this. So this is how religions start. So the religions inquire into what the Vedas are saying, don't get it completely, and come up with something that satisfies their own thinking, which is not in keeping with what the Vedas is, but it is enough to gather a few people around them. Enough to do that. And that fuels it even more, because others say, yeah, that makes sense. Well, there is one Buddha which is talking to other Buddhas. What are you going to do? And they all feel, yeah, this seems good. This seems good. Because part of it, another part I tell you is interesting is that karma is very binding. Very binding. The sense of doing something is very binding. What do we mean by binding? So Swami Dayananda used to explain this so well. He says, look at the results of your karma. Okay? Karma means that you you decide to, I don't know, I'm just taking one example. Supposing you go to a restaurant and you try out some new food, Korean food or something, Vietnamese food or something, okay? And then you go there and you say, wow, this was wonderful. This is really good. You know what happens? You leave with a feeling, we must come here again. Binding. Because now there is a desire to have the same food over and over again. So either it was better than what you expected, in which case it is binding. If it is less than what you expected, you will say, it was good, but I think it was too spicy for me. So if I can find a Thai restaurant, this is what happened to me. Pami and I were in Bangkok one time, and this person called Sabir Bhatia, who is the hot meal guy. So he's a neighbor of ours, practically next door. So when he got married, he invited us to go to his wedding. And so we went to Thailand to attend his wedding. And then we also spent a few days in Bangkok. He was in some coastal town where the wedding was, but after the wedding we thought we might as well see Bangkok. We have never been there. So we go to this restaurant, and it's a Thai restaurant, very authentic. And both of us, we are from the north, we don't take a lot of spices. We just very mild, some spice. So we kept telling them, please make it very mild, please make it very mild. Inedible. Inedible. It was so much, I remember that we left the food, half of so on and so forth. So it all depends on the shades of what you're talking about and so on. What was the main topic that we were talking about for a minute? Jainism and Buddhism. So what happens is that in Jainism, this seems to be a comfortable explanation. This is not really something I completely understand, but it is enough for me to accept it. So they all said, okay, this is enough. This is non-spicy. This is perfect. We don't need anything more than that. Then, okay, no, I know. No, there was something missing. I'm sorry about that. Effect of karma which is not satisfying. So we did karma which is more than satisfying, you do that again. Supposing you do karma which is less than satisfying, so then you say this Thai food was very spicy, but we like the Thai food, let's make it less spicy. And so this is exactly what we have one in Mountain View. Anjali, you must know this. If not, you should know this. Pami, what's the name of it? Amrin. This is a Thai food place on Castro Street in Mountain View. And they don't put a lot of spices. We love it. We just like the place. So Jainism means that the karmas can be binding. So apart from Jainism, karmas are binding if it is better than you expected. Karmas are binding if it is less than expected. And if it is exactly what is expected, which is not normal, there again you say, I must do this again. So karma is a very binding thing for us. Everybody wants to do something. Nobody wants to just know something. I'm anxious. So Kriya Shakti is a very powerful Shakti. So in Jainism, there is this concept of, there's a very beautiful religion actually, of not hurting anybody. And this is why we are starting to wear masks now with COVID. Jainism has been wearing masks for the last 5,000 years. Not 5,000, but whatever it is. Because they don't want to even breathe in, they overdo it. They feel that I have to be very pure. Bhai, Swami Dayanand used to say that this is silly, totally silly. Do you know when you walk, how many things you kill? Every time you walk, you're probably, just from the dining hall to here, you probably killed about 5,000 different things that you didn't even see. What are you going to do about it? And so they do this karma, but they feel very good about it. Because, then we will do puja and then we do this. So in their case, karma is very, very important. Secondly, they do not believe or understand Ekadevavada. They come up with all kinds of situations to say, if it is a single Atma, then if you have a problem, then I will also have a problem. But I don't. Everybody has their own individual. So how can it be a single Atma? So they have now come up with a theory that even though, so there are some semblance of what the Vedas say. And the same thing is true for Sankhya. In Sankhya they say Prakriti is the troublemaker, and Prakriti and Atma get mixed up. And if we separate the Atma from the Prakriti, you get moksha. And we kind of say the same thing, but they don't say they don't need Ishvara for doing this. This is our individual responsibility. Everybody has to figure out how to get separated from Prakriti. And you don't need Ishvara. Why are you counting about what is this Ishvara doing in the business? We can figure it out on our own. This is what the Sankhyas do. The Jains also believe the same thing, that everybody has their own individual Atma. Okay, individual Atma means what? What is the shape of the Atma? This is where I don't know even how they defend it and so on. Because individual Atma means that some individuality of the Atma means that it must have some uniqueness to it. What is that uniqueness? And uniqueness means, as soon as you say, I am unique, you have a problem. Because you have some boundaries that define the uniqueness, and that boundary can be violated. So you cannot have moksha if you have conditional Atma. You cannot do that. But they are sitting quietly saying, okay, this is enough for us, and so on and so forth. So this is what the Jainism is. Buddhism is this something very similar. Buddha never really did not have a real teacher. Anybody can have an experience because the Atma is, then he might have had Vairagya. I agree with that. So Vairagya is very important. We'll talk about this whole Guru thing tomorrow. So the Vairagya, you cannot really see the Ishvara within you until you have Vairagya. So it is well established that Buddha, he was not called Buddha at that time, but he gave up a lot because he was a king, and so he could see dukkha. So everything is dukkhi. Everything is dukkha. And he gave it up. And if you start to give things up, then the Atma actually becomes more prominent in your mind, and Atma is a sukha. It's basically satyam jnanam ananta satchid anandaha. It's ananda swarupaha. So anybody can have that experience for doing so. But it is not as well thought through as the Shastra gives us the wherewithal for doing that. So you stop the inquiry, and so this is one interesting thing. We have a problem in separating experience from knowledge. And Swami Dayananda's example is so easy to get on the fundamentals of Vedanta. What is it called? Introduction to Vedanta. It's a very important book. There he says that if you look at the sunrise, you can have an experience of sunrise without knowledge. And then you can have an experience of sunrise with knowledge. Experience remains the same, but the understanding makes it so complete and realistic. So, anybody can have an experience of the Atma. I mean, everybody is the Atma. Atma is the experience. But even more than that, Buddhism, in short, are experience seekers, not knowledge seekers. And I still remember this, my God, oof. There was a lecture that Swamiji gave. Was it maybe a satsang or a lecture? I don't know, which one or the other. And Swamiji normally doesn't put down anything. I'm not sure. He does put down here and there. He would say idiot a lot and so on. So I am not sure. I'm just being too generous to him. But on this day, he was talking about the vipassana. He says, can I make a request of you? He said this. He says, can I make a request? You can probably go do anything you want to, but please don't go to vipassana. And he's never been to a vipassana. I'm sure that he's never been to it. But what he had heard about it from people was very damaging, because it's very experiential. You have to be very quiet, you have to just mauna, and you cannot talk to people. you suppress any thoughts, and it is so over-disciplined and so on. But people, there's a certain independence from the world, and they like it. But then it doesn't last. You're going back again. Same thing with Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the yogics do. In the yoga, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, we think it is very silly, totally silly, that you have all this yama, niyama, etc., with Nirvikalpa Samadhi. How long are you going to be in Nirvikalpa Samadhi? You're going to go to the bathroom pretty soon. You want to urinate. You cannot do that in the Samadhi. You can actually if you want to, but you won't do that. Samadhi cannot last. And so these are very silly things. And so the Buddhism also is very experientially oriented, of just calming your mind down for a while and so on and so forth. And you don't think through as to what the reality of that is. So these are all the issues that come up. But I think that then you have ego involved in all of this. Some ego comes in and you say, I did this, I figured it out. And then, so you also do it. And they can also have some experience, and they say, yes, this makes a lot of sense. Buddhism also... Yeah. Buddhism also suffers from other thing, that they don't really have a well-formed sampradaya. And so we cannot even, quite frankly, we don't know what Buddha himself knew or didn't know, because it has never been well preserved. That's only some hearsay here and there. But what we do know is that he never had a real Vedic guru. You cannot have moksha without a Vedic guru, Vedanta guru. You cannot do that, absolutely not. In fact, I tell you, it was interesting. All of us we all students have silly questions that we ask from time to time, just because something comes up and so on. So I remember asking a question from Swamiji one time. I said, Swamiji, Mahatma Gandhi was a great soul. His name is Mahatma. So Mahatma means great soul. Absolutely, translation of Mahatma is great soul. And so there was in private, when I was with Swami Jesus, with myself, not trying to make a satsang out of it or anything. So I asked him, I said, Swamiji, Mahatma Gandhi, you think he reached moksha? I mean, my question had not even finished, and he said, no way. And the reason is he never studied. Just doing Gita and so on and so forth is not enough. You have to really be, our minds are so fickle and so on and so forth. So I got my answer. I said, okay, I understand. Sorry.
Guruji, two questions. The first one is, this morning you mentioned Giri, the word Giri has two meanings. One is the top of the mountain.
Correct.
And the second is words of the Vedas.
Yes.
And then you mentioned that words are important to gain freedom from Punya or Papa.
Right.
So I would like a little explanation on that, and then I can ask the second question now or later.
No, but even the first question is not clear to me. What is your question?
My question is, how can words give you freedom from Punya and Papa?
Okay, that I thought I went through. I went through with saying Tattvamasi, the 10th man example. You are the 10th man is our words.
Okay.
You see, the person who... The 10th man example is just one of the, I think, absolutely... This is why it has really preserved over the eons. Because 10th man example is, I can make a mistake about something else. Like this Rajju Sarpa example, the rope and snake, that I can see. Because if I can see where I can make a mistake of taking an innocent rope into a dangerous snake. That I can see. Okay? But there my mistake is about something other than me. How can I make a mistake about myself? I know myself better than anybody else. I know what my problems are, what my capabilities are. I am living with my body and mind 24 hours. Nobody else is doing it. I know it very well. So how can I make a mistake? This is where the 10th man example comes in. Because in the 10th man example, this is an important example because if you analyze the entire content of the 10th man and the entire set of relationships of the 10th man, they are all very accurate. He is 17 years old, his father is this, his mother is this, his guru is this, his friends are this, all very accurate. Absolutely pakka. There's one thing that he was missing that created all of his problems. That the 10th man is missing. I'm responsible for it, and what will I do? The guru kept telling me, don't go. I was the one who convinced him, please, all these are good swimmers, I know it, and I will personally take it. So Guru said, I don't like it, but if you really insist, okay. So he says, I took the responsibility and so on, and now one person has. And the funny part, this example, you can give 10 classes just on this one example. The interesting thing is, in the 10th man example, they cannot even know who was missing. They can't even find who was missing. But something is missing. That's all they know. Something is missing was enough to create havoc in their minds. If somebody is missing, it's not an ordinary thing. This is a very important thing. All of that grief, all of that misconception about it, so on, words can immediately take it. He said, well, you are the 10th man. And the person says, oh my God. Swamiji used to say this, I tell you, this is something wonderful. Early on when we started our course, and we would have satsang with him and so on and so forth. And then one of us will generally ask him, he said, Swamiji, how do you feel now that you're a Mahatma? Tell us what your feelings are, what you do, and so on and so forth. So Swamiji's answer was very interesting. He said, I can tell you one thing. I don't feel proud of myself. In fact, I feel silly for myself. And this is a beautiful answer, because a person who has gained moksha is not like, I am a moksha. What you is, my God, why couldn't I figure it out before? And I troubled so many people, including myself. Oof. This is the feeling that you get. Of course, inside that you're very satisfied and happy. But, and so this 10th man example, this person, when he said, you are the 10th man, you can imagine what he must be feeling. That for the last 2 hours, I've been bothering everybody, and I'm hitting my own head and so on, blood is coming out, and I'm creating all of this, all for just a simple, how could I miss myself? I don't understand this. This is the power of words, Tattvamasi. So yeah, absolutely the words are important.
And my second question is, this is just from my reading. From what I read over the years, Rudra is a primitive swarupa of Shiva.
What form of Shiva?
Primitive. It was
primitive,
not evolved. Is what?
Primitive. Is that the word?
Yes.
No. It's the same thing as Shiva. Not a primitive, no. It's just some funny interpretation. No.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same. There's no difference between. Prakash had a question, sorry.
So, Guruji, after the Rudram chanting, normally we chant Trayambam Yajamahe.
Yes.
So, is there any connection between these two, or under the framework you described before? Is it Prarthana or Namaha or just a ritual?
No, this is just by tradition. People like to have that Triambakam Yajamahe. So in Swami Maheshanandaji's teaching, he refers to it, and I think we might do that. What is the meaning of Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhanam? And so he comments it on this, makes a comment on it on the side.
Okay.
And even Swami Dayanandji, I think he goes through, but he says that this is a separate one. Through tradition it has just happened. Okay. But that's all it is.
Okay.
But no, it is not part of the Rudram per se.
Okay, thank you.
The Rudram stops at Namo Rudrebhyaha, the last one, Dasha. I look at this left and I look at right and so on. That is the last one. That is where it ends. But as tradition, we also do Triambaka Yajamahe Sugandhim. Yeah.
So I actually had a very quick comment on Rudra. So I believe that misconception comes from early Indologists who were looking into they had very little understanding of Veda.
Who, sorry?
The comment about Rudra being a primitive Shiva.
Oh, the primitive part of, okay, I got it.
It basically came, from my understanding, is from a misconception which early Indologists had, people from the Western countries.
I see.
And in the Harappan culture, there are a lot of seals. And one of the seals they found was somebody in meditative posture.
Okay.
So they interpreted that to Rudra somehow with Vedas.
Oh, I see.
And that's how the whole confusion started. That's my interpretation, my thinking. And
yeah, there's so much. So Swami Maheshanandaji also goes through this so much. We talked, I think there was a question, from Nilima about Krishna and Ganesha Puja and so on. So in the early, the evolution of the Hindu thought and so on, it used to be just Shiva. So it was all Vaidika Yajna, Vaidika Puja and so on. So this Ganesh Puja, Saraswati Puja, Vishnu's Puja and so on is much more recent and is not really authentic enough as part of that. Really Shiva Bhakti and Shiva Puja is the original one that
So Vijayji, on that, from my limited understanding of history, Vishnu Puja became prominent around Gupta period.
Oh, really?
Which was around 800.
That recent?
Yeah. So that's when you start seeing major sculptures of Vishnu being formed.
Interesting.
Before that, it was primarily...
I would have thought that it's much older than that, but it is interesting that...
He was in the text, there were Puranas, but when you see temples, or temples dedicated to just Vishnu, in their time period became a lot more prominent than before.
Okay. By the way, just on that point, in this book by Swami Maheshanandaji, and in fact even in his description of the various mantras, he refers very heavily to the various forms of Shiva and how the various forms of Shiva are being preserved in various temples in India. And I ignored all the details, there's nothing there for me to remember, but he goes through a lot of, of various aspects of Shiva which are there in the temple. So just like, for example, we have temples dedicated to Vayu and to Akasha and to Agni and all of that. And so, similarly, there's a variety of different temples that can focus on some aspect of Ishvara. Yeah, that all that. But here it is all aspect of Shiva itself that he refers to. Yeah.
Guruji, I have few questions. Poonam.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So, my first question actually is a very basic one. Why this whole dream is even created?
I didn't quite...
So, we are all part of a dream. This is not...
Yeah, dream.
Right.
Or
So
part of
why-
a dream.
Yeah, so why this dream even created?
It's never created. Nothing is ever created.
Okay, so why this dream even exist?
Because if the dream does not exist, then you as a person will not also exist.
Yeah. So what is the need of our existence?
Because there will be no variety, no play, no nothing. It will be complete silence and complete nothingness. And that's not this. What is the whole creation is the very beauty of variety and sukha dukkha and so on. So it is something which is very natural. So if you look at this panchavritti of satyam, jnanam, anantam, and ajnanam and moksha, okay? So what really makes it look like a creation is ajnanam. And so it is a pretend creation. It is a pretend creation. Swami Maheshanand gives a beautiful, one very, very, very good, this is not a complete answer, but it reminds me of what he was talking about. And by the way, what the question that you have is a very basic one and a very important one, and not easy to grasp, but there is the truth. There is no real creation. If you look at the, I'm just going back and forth, if you look at the Karika of the Mandukya Upanishad, they have 3 Karikas, the most important 3 books in Vedanta in my view, by the Guru's Guru of Adi Shankara. And there he explains this in great detail, that really there is no creation, no nothing, but it just looks like a creation because this is the beauty of the so-called creation. That, and you know, this is what I began the whole thing, that really it's a play. The whole thing is a joke. That was the word I used. So the joke is that it may be, and so maybe joke is not the right word, but supposing you have a play, and here's again, Swami Maheshanji makes this beautiful point. If you go to a play and it's a tragic play, Shakespeare's tragedy, one of the, and so on, you still enjoy it. You still enjoy it. And so it is entertaining even if it is bad. So the end of the whole thing is joy. But in the meantime, there is a certain pretension. Remember that example I gave about the person who got his uncle to play soccer. So sports is also a pretend competition. So this is why the sports becomes a very important thing, because if you have a team which is very powerful, another one who is not powerful, there's no game. You won't even go to that. You need both the teams to be equally good, just to kind of make it into interest. Let's see who wins. Let's see who wins. This is what the National Basketball, NBA, just recently did. So it's there is nothing, either there is nothingness or there is something. Then the best way to have something is to have a pretend something. Because if you have real tragedies, then you are not a good, then the creation doesn't make any sense, because you cannot have a comedy for everybody in the end. But here, even the losers win if they really turn their attention towards what winning means, and that they're already won, praptasya prapti. I'm going on and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's not something that... So the question is, interestingly enough, the why of the creation is not a appropriate question to ask. Why is there a creation? It's just like, and Swami Dayananda used to do this. He says, if you ask me that question, I'm going to ask you this question. Tell me, why is the fire hot? You, okay, think about it and tell me the answer. If you can answer that, I will answer to you why there is the reason for the Prakriti.
So the other way to maybe ask the question is, why this even ajnanam is created? If it's a play, if we take that as an analogy, then it could have been created in a way where we have the awareness and we are still playing the game.
Right.
Because if...
No, you will not play the game. If you knew what was it, you will not play any game whatsoever. You will not even you will not even pretend or anything. You play because, you see, this is the thing. The dream becomes interesting because you don't know that it's a dream. You don't know it's a dream. You think it is real when it is not. And that is the real beauty of it. If everything is... there was a very nice example given by Swamiji. He said, Swami Dayananda, he said that, in Bollywood, up until recently, now I guess I don't see any films whatsoever, which is a big problem with my wife. She thinks that I should at least see some things, but I refuse to. But in the old days, when I used to see films, the plot remains more or less the same. Plot is the same. And the plot is that there is a man and a woman who really want to love each other, but there are some gundas in the picture, and there is a lot of fight going on, and there are... Huh? No, they're supposed to be better movies now. But in those cases, possibly, I don't know if were there any movies in which the gundas won in the end and the movie ends? Probably not, I don't know. But in between there was a lot of dukkha, lot of things, kidnapping, this, that, rapes, all kinds of problems. So this producer and director, they said, I don't know why people make films like that. What we are going to do is to make a film in which there is no dukkha whatsoever. We know that it is just pretend. Why pretend? Let's just make a film. So they created an elaborate film. And the film was, there were two friends who were so pure in their thoughts, so loving to each other, and so loving to their parents, and very bright also. They were standing first and second in the class. You couldn't find anything wrong with them. Beautiful bodies, minds, everything. Then they got married. And they got married to people who were equally good, equally beautiful. And they had children who were so wonderful. The grandparents were spending all the time. They were just having parties together. And they were marrying, the friends were intermarrying each other, everything. And then the movie ends. The movie ends. So they all shoot this movie and they said, my God, we have really created a very good movie. So they invited their wives for a private showing before they released it. Their wife said, "Oh my God, are you stupid or what? No one is going to see this movie. They're all going to see, where is the Gunda? Where is he going to come into the picture? There is no Gunda, everything is all well." So you have to create some kind of a situation through this. But the good part is that even if the movie is bad in the middle, it ends very well. This is really what it matters. So when I said it's a joke or a khel, this is exactly right. You know, when they say this is Bhagwan's Leela, what it really means is that this is a very interesting play. And in the end is just complete laughter. Can you imagine making a play in which it was all very pleasant during the play, that ends in tragedy? Would that be an Ishvara? Then you can start questioning Ishvara, but not at the moment. Not at the moment. So anyway, to answer the question, the why is not really relevant because this is the way it is. And the way it is are these panchavrittis. Panchavrittis. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, and then Ajnanam and Jnanam. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
One quick question. While answering this question, you mentioned there are most three important books in your opinion. And then I think you switched something else.
Really? Did I said... oh, I'm sorry. So this is the Mandukya Upanishad, which is really the most advanced Upanishad there is, and should be studied after all the other Upanishads are, because it won't make sense. But in the end, this is one has to be left with, is the Avasthatraya Sakshitvam. So this is the thing. And then, it is such a short Upanishad with only 11 verses, I think. 11 or 12 or something. That's it. And it's only such a short one. Just like Om Namah Shivaya, it has to be explained. There's a lot behind. It's like an iceberg. Behind that, there is a lot of detail that you should know. That was provided by the Paramaguru of Adi Shankara and Gaudapada. It's called Gaudapada. Gaudapada is considered to be the person, even more than Adi Shankara, who revived the sampradaya of Advaita Vedanta. And he has not written a lot, but what he has written are 3 volumes called Karika 1, Karika 2, Karika 3. And at some point in time, if you're interested, I believe, Chandra, if I'm, that all of them were recorded. We had already started our videos at that by time, isn't it? So I think it is available in our Arsha Vidya Center. But don't study it until you've covered a lot of other ground, because otherwise it won't make any sense to you. Yeah. It's already 8:35, so let us call it quits. I think there was something that was being proposed by Sahadeva, so we'll see. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om.